was 5 years old when my father committed suicide. And in those days in Scotland, you didn't take children to funerals. All I knew was that my mom came home with a black dress and a black hat and took every photograph of my father off the walls and off the tables, and she put them in a little suitcase. And she locked the suitcase and she pushed it under his bed, and we never mentioned his name again. I lived with the understanding that I had brought the house down on my family, because my father he'd been depressed, but then he had a brain injury that changed his personality. So from being this loving, warm, fun dad, my father became a very angry and confused and ultimately violent stranger. And the final showdown was with me. The last time I ever saw my dad, I turned just in time to see him about to bring his cane down on my skull. And I don't remember if I pushed him or if I pulled the cane, but he fell hard and lay on the ground just roaring like an animal. And from then, everything's just a blur. He was taken off to what was called our local asylum. He was put in maximum security ward, and he was 34 years old. And I lived the rest of my life thinking I cost my family everything. If I hadn't fought back, if I'd done more, if I'd not made him angry, we would all have been okay. And one night he escaped from the hospital, and they looked for him all night and found him in the morning. He had drowned himself in the river, and he was caught in the salmon nets. And I remember thinking, a lifetime is not enough to pay for what I've done. And so when I became a Christian, when I gave my life to Christ, I thought, okay, I now have a new father. So whatever my old dad saw in me, God will never see. I will be the perfect Christian woman if it kills me. And it almost did. I found the perfect place to hide. You know, if you're in pain, you need to some people hide in alcohol or drugs or sex, but I found the perfect place, the church. You know, nobody's going to say to you there, put that Bible down or we're going to have an intervention. So that's where I hid for most of the rest of my life, and I ended up co-host the Christian Broadcasting Network. But inside I was falling apart. And one morning, I just lost it. I started to cry and I couldn't stop. So I went from in the morning being co-host of the 700 Club, and by that evening I was in the locked ward of a psychiatric hospital, and I was 34 years old, same as my dad. And what I thought was the end of my life became the beginning of a different life. A life where I would have the rare privilege of looking into the eyes of anyone who struggles with mental illness and say these two powerful words, me too. Most people think they're alone and there's no help, and there's such a stigma attached. And it's why I am profoundly grateful to the psychiatrists, the counselors, the therapists that I met with, who didn't talk to me like I was case number 34, but saw me as a person who had struggled. I wasn't defined by my illness, but rather I was brave because I was still walking. And I think that the medical community, the psychiatric community, and basically, if you think a psychiatrist is a doctor of the soul, that's the original definition. And I think that one of the most beautiful gifts that those caregivers give is to help people know that they're seen and that they are loved and that they are known. And I guess my greatest heart for the church is that we would begin to understand that mental illness is that. It's an illness. It's not a lack of faith. It's not some secret sin in your life. I would have so many people who came up to me before I ended up in hospital and say, come on, remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I wanted to say, look, if your child fell off the swing and lay there with the broken leg, would you say, come on, get up, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? My break just appeared in a place that wasn't quite so visible. But I think this is our moment as the church. If we'll realize that Christ, if you think of the ultimate position of Christ, it's this. It's come as you are, arms wide open. Not you have to pass a series of tests and answer the right questions, but you get to show up as you are and be loved and be heard and be understood. And I think we could be on the beginning of the greatest days of our life.